Mama Lindy stood at the edge of the small yard, her eyes following her son, Bayo, as he ran barefoot over the soft grass. The morning sun was gentle, casting a golden light over the garden, and the flowers swayed slightly in the warm breeze. Bayo's laughter rang through the air, light and carefree, as he chased a bright red ball that bounced unpredictably across the yard. He was entirely unaware of the weight of Mama Lindy's thoughts, of the worry that had settled quietly in her chest like a small stone. She watched him tilt his head back, smiling, his small teeth catching the sunlight, and she felt a swell of love and tenderness. Tomorrow would be a new day, a day she had thought about for weeks, and yet now that it was almost here, she felt an unfamiliar mixture of emotions. It was his first day at the new community center, a place that promised to be full of learning, new friends, and new experiences. She knew it would help him grow, help him meet children his own age, and teach him things she could not teach at home alone. But the thought of letting him go, of handing him over to strangers even for just a few hours, made her stomach tighten. She found herself fidgeting with the hem of her dress, twisting it between her fingers without realizing it. Bayo kicked the ball too hard this time and it rolled under the small wooden fence. He stopped suddenly, his tiny feet skidding slightly on the grass. Mama Lindy held her breath for a moment, expecting him to call for help or hesitate. Instead, he bent down, picked the ball up and kept playing, completely unharmed. A sigh escaped her lips, a mix of relief and lingering fear. Even in the safety of their own yard, she realized that letting go would always come with little moments of anxiety. She thought about the caregivers at the center, wondering who they were, what they were like, and if they would notice the small things like when a child fell or got hurt. Would they be gentle? Would they be patient when a child cried? Her mind raced with questions she could not answer. She had visited the center once, walked past the bright, painted walls and the colorful mats scattered on the floor, and had met a few of the staff members. They had smiled warmly, but smiles, she knew, could sometimes hide a lot. She needed to be sure. She needed to know that Bayo would be safe. Bayo paused mid-chase and turned toward her, sensing her gaze. He wiped his nose on the back of his hand, looking a little confused. "Mama, are you watching me again?" he asked, tilting his head. His voice was small but clear, tinged with the innocence that made Mama Lindy's heart ache. She crouched down to his level, letting her eyes meet his. "Yes, Bayo. I'm just watching you because I love you, and I want to make sure you are safe," she said softly. He nodded, his serious little face thoughtful for a moment, then smiled and ran off again after the ball. Mama Lindy straightened, her chest tight with love, and whispered to herself, "Tomorrow will be okay. It has to be okay." As she watched him play, she thought about the lessons she had tried to teach him at home. She had always told him to be polite, to share with friends, to listen carefully, and to say if he ever felt uncomfortable or scared. But she knew that the real test would come when she was not there to hold his hand. Would he remember? Would he know how to protect himself in ways she could not? She shivered slightly at the thought, even though the sun was warm on her back. Her mind wandered to the stories she had heard from other mothers. Stories of children who had wandered too far, of moments when a caregiver had missed a small sign, and of accidents that could have been prevented with just a little more attention. She tried not to dwell too much on these things, but she could not stop herself. Every parent wanted to believe that the world was safe for their children, but Mama Lindy knew the world could be unpredictable, even in small, familiar places. Bayo suddenly sat down on the grass, holding the ball in his hands. He looked at Mama Lindy and smiled brightly, showing a little dimple on his cheek. "Mama, I'm going to make lots of friends tomorrow," he said eagerly, his voice full of excitement. Mama Lindy felt a mixture of pride and worry. She wanted to share in his excitement, but she also felt a knot in her stomach. The thought of him out of her sight, laughing with children she did not know, was both thrilling and terrifying. She took a step closer, kneeling down beside him. "I know, Bayo. I'm sure you will make many friends and I hope you have lots of fun," she said, forcing a smile that did not fully reach her eyes. She wanted him to feel her confidence, her belief that everything would be fine, even as her mind churned with what-ifs. Bayo hugged the ball to his chest and leaned against her side for a moment. Mama Lindy felt his small arms wrap around her gently, and she closed her eyes, breathing in the scent of his hair and the warmth of his tiny body. She wished she could hold him like this forever, wishing she could protect him from every possible worry or harm. But she knew she could not. He had to take steps on his own, and she had to learn to let go little by little and trust that she had prepared him well. After a few moments, Bayo jumped up and shouted, "I'm ready to play again." He ran toward the ball, tossing it into the air and catching it clumsily. Mama Lindy watched him, smiling faintly. Her heart was full, but the small knot of worry remained. Tomorrow, she reminded herself, tomorrow he would start something new. And tomorrow she had to trust that her love, her teaching, and her careful attention would be enough to keep him safe. She thought about how she would prepare him tonight, reminding him of the rules she had taught him about speaking up, listening carefully, and being kind to others. She thought about packing his small bag, making sure it had everything he needed, from his favorite snack to the little water bottle he liked. Even the small things mattered. Every detail mattered. Mama Lindy watched the sun climb higher in the sky, casting longer shadows across the yard. Bayo continued to play, running and laughing as if the world was made entirely of joy and fun. She took a deep breath and tried to mirror his energy, letting a small smile curve her lips. The worry in her chest would not disappear completely, but perhaps it could be balanced with hope. Perhaps she could find comfort in knowing that she had done everything she could to prepare him, and that tomorrow, when the world would seem larger and busier, Bayo would still carry her love and guidance with him. The birds chirped in the nearby trees, and the wind rustled the leaves softly. Mama Lindy felt a strange combination of fear and excitement. The world outside her yard was big and unknown, but it also held promise. She remembered the words she had often told herself when facing new challenges: courage is not the absence of fear. It is feeling the fear and moving forward anyway. She held on to that thought, hoping it would be true for Bayo as well as for herself. As the afternoon approached, Mama Lindy called Bayo to come inside. He ran toward her, panting slightly, still laughing and holding the ball tightly. She knelt and hugged him once more, feeling the warmth of his small body and the innocence that made her heart ache with both joy and worry. "Let's get ready for tomorrow," she said gently, guiding him toward the house. She knew there would be a lot to do: washing, packing, maybe reading a story to calm his mind. But mostly she knew that she would spend the evening trying to instill confidence, to ease the worry, and to remind Bayo that he was loved, safe, and ready for the next step in his journey. Even as she helped him wash his hands and change into clean clothes, Mama Lindy's mind lingered on the thought of tomorrow. The excitement, the new friends, the new routines, all of it was a mix of adventure and worry. But as she looked at Bayo's bright eyes, full of curiosity and trust, she felt a small spark of reassurance. Perhaps it would all be okay. Perhaps, with careful attention, patience, and love, he would thrive in the new environment. And so, Mama Lindy spent the rest of the afternoon quietly preparing, her heart a blend of hope, love, and gentle worry, ready to face tomorrow with courage, for both herself and her little boy, Bayo, who laughed and played as if the world were entirely his own. Mama Lindy arrived at the community center early the next morning, long before the children were expected to arrive. The sun had just started to rise, and its warm light touched the painted walls and the small playground outside. The yard was quiet except for the soft rustle of leaves and the distant chirping of birds. She took a deep breath and adjusted the strap of her bag on her shoulder. Today was important not just for Bayo but for her as a mother. She wanted to be sure that this place, this new environment, was truly safe for him. She walked slowly toward the entrance, keeping her steps light so as not to draw attention. The center's front door opened into a bright room filled with colorful mats, small chairs, and tables arranged neatly. On the walls were pictures of children's drawings: rainbows, houses, animals, and happy faces. Mama Lindy paused for a moment, taking in the cheerful atmosphere. The room looked lively even though it was empty. It promised learning, play, and the first steps into a world beyond their home. As she moved closer to the side of the room, she saw the caregivers arriving. They greeted each other warmly, speaking in calm, gentle voices. Mama Lindy watched closely, noticing the way they smiled at each other and then at the space where children would soon arrive. She observed how they checked the toys, arranged the mats, and made sure everything was clean and in order. It was small details like these that mattered. She wanted to see if the adults truly cared about the children who would be in their care. The first child arrived, a little girl carrying a small backpack with bright cartoon characters on it. She hesitated at the doorway, and one of the caregivers knelt down to greet her. Mama Lindy watched as the caregiver smiled gently, spoke in a soft voice, and held out her hand. The little girl took it slowly, her eyes wide but trusting, and soon she was walking into the room with a shy smile. Mama Lindy felt a flicker of relief. This was the kind of care she had hoped to see. Another child tripped on the edge of the mat, and Mama Lindy's attention sharpened. She saw the caregiver quickly kneel beside the child, check if he was hurt, and help him back up with a reassuring pat on the shoulder. The child's tears faded quickly and he returned to the group, smiling again. Mama Lindy let out a quiet breath she hadn't realized she had been holding. Small incidents like this could happen anywhere, but the way adults handled them made all the difference. Soon, Bayo entered the center, carrying his small backpack with his favorite water bottle peeking out. He looked around with wide eyes, curiosity sparkling in his face. Mama Lindy noticed how he paused for a moment, unsure of where to go, and how one caregiver immediately walked over, bending to greet him. She spoke kindly, asking his name and gently guiding him toward the play area. Mama Lindy's heart softened. It was a simple interaction, but it reassured her that someone was paying attention, that someone noticed her son in the midst of many children. Bayo glanced toward Mama Lindy and spotted her standing quietly in the corner. His face lit up with recognition and he waved. Then, with a small tilt of his head, he asked, "Why are you watching, Mama?" Mama Lindy smiled, crouching slightly so that her eyes met his. "Just making sure you're safe, my dear," she said softly. Bayo nodded, his little face serious for a moment, and then he turned and joined the other children in play. Mama Lindy felt a mix of pride and worry. She wanted to be invisible, to watch without influencing, but also wanted him to know that she was always near, always caring. She observed the caregivers carefully, noticing more details. One was helping two children share a toy truck. At first they argued softly, each wanting it first. The caregiver spoke gently, suggesting they take turns and showing them how to play together. Bayo watched from a distance, curious about the solution. Mama Lindy smiled slightly. She liked how the adults were teaching lessons not only in fun, but in kindness, patience, and cooperation. She saw another caregiver reading aloud to a small group of children on a colorful carpet. The children leaned in, listening closely, eyes wide and attentive. Mama Lindy watched Bayo join the circle, settling next to a little girl who smiled at him. The words from the story floated across the room, and she noticed how the caregiver paused at each page, asked questions and encouraged the children to share their thoughts. Mama Lindy felt her chest swell with relief. Learning was happening here, but it was gentle and thoughtful, just the way she had hoped for her son. Mama Lindy continued to watch, noting even the small things. How a caregiver wiped a child's nose with care, how another reminded a boy to wash his hands before snacks, how they encouraged children to tidy up without scolding or forcing them. Every little detail mattered. She wanted to be sure that if Bayo fell, cried, or felt uncertain, there would be someone patient and kind to help him. As the morning continued, more children arrived and the room grew noisier. Laughter, small shouts, and the sounds of toys filled the air. Mama Lindy remained in her corner, quietly observing, her eyes never leaving Bayo for long. She noticed that he was beginning to relax, joining the other children in games, sharing his toys and laughing with them. It was a relief to see him adapting, and a small part of her worry eased. Still, she kept her attention sharp. She noticed when a child dropped a toy, and how a caregiver quickly came to help. She observed when a small disagreement arose between two children over building blocks, and how it was resolved calmly. No one shouted. No one forced the children. Everything was gentle, careful, and reassuring. Mama Lindy thought to herself that maybe, just maybe, this place was truly as safe as it looked. She also thought about Bayo's reactions. He seemed happy, curious, and engaged. He ran, jumped, and laughed, but she could tell he was paying attention, learning how to interact with others. She smiled at the thought that her son was not only being cared for but was being guided in understanding kindness, sharing, and patience. She wanted him to grow strong, confident, and gentle. When snack time came, Mama Lindy watched as the children lined up politely, as instructed by the caregivers. They received small portions of food, washed their hands, and ate together. Bayo held his little water bottle tightly, occasionally taking small sips, and Mama Lindy could see he felt comfortable enough to eat among the other children. She realized that comfort and routine were just as important as rules and safety. During a quiet moment, one caregiver noticed Mama Lindy and smiled warmly. Mama Lindy returned the smile, nodding slightly. She appreciated the openness, the welcoming attitude. She didn't want to intrude, but she also wanted to observe openly if needed. The balance was delicate, but so far it seemed well maintained. As the morning passed, Mama Lindy's worry gradually shifted into cautious optimism. The caregivers were attentive, patient, and kind. Bayo was learning, playing, and engaging with others. She could still feel a small knot of concern in her stomach. It was natural for a mother, but the reassurance from her observations was growing. She felt a quiet pride in both the community center and her son. She continued watching until it was time for the morning activities to end. Bayo waved at her again, smiling brightly, showing that he felt safe and happy. Mama Lindy waved back, feeling her heart lighten. She knew that tomorrow and the days after she would continue to watch, to observe, and to guide him in understanding safety and kindness. Even as she left the center quietly, stepping onto the warm pavement outside, Mama Lindy reflected on what she had seen. The caregivers were not perfect, they were human after all, but they were attentive, caring, and responsible. Bayo had already begun to learn about sharing, patience, and friendship. Most importantly, he felt secure, and she felt reassured that she had made a careful choice. Mama Lindy took a deep breath, the warm morning sun on her face. She smiled softly to herself, proud of her careful observation, proud of her son, and confident that tomorrow he would step into the community center with curiosity, excitement, and the gentle guidance she had taught him at home. Mama Lindy had been watching the children and the caregivers for several hours, and for the most part she felt a quiet reassurance. Most of the adults were attentive, patient, and gentle with the children. But as the morning continued, her eyes caught something small that caused a twinge of unease. It happened during playtime when the children were scattered across the room, building towers with blocks and running softly on the mats. One child, a little boy with curly hair, had dropped a small toy car. It rolled across the floor, quiet but noticeable to anyone paying attention. Mama Lindy's gaze followed the toy, and then the caregiver assigned to that area. She noticed the caregiver was distracted, bending over to adjust a chair for another child and talking softly to a colleague. The toy lay on the floor for a few moments before the child picked it up again, but Mama Lindy felt that subtle discomfort in her chest. It was not a major incident, no one was hurt, and the toy was quickly retrieved. Yet the fact that the caregiver had not noticed it immediately made her uneasy. She leaned slightly against the wall, her mind turning over the small moment again and again. Why had the caregiver not noticed? Was it a simple oversight, or did it hint at something more significant? Mama Lindy reminded herself that every adult could have a distracted moment. Humans were not perfect, and no one could watch every child every second of the day. Still, she could not completely ignore the feeling in her stomach that told her to pay attention, to watch closely. Mothers had instincts, she thought, instincts that were rarely wrong. Bayo, oblivious to her worry, continued playing nearby. He had joined a group of children building a tower with colorful blocks, his little hand steady as he placed one block on top of another. He laughed when the tower wobbled, and Mama Lindy felt her heart swell with love. She wanted him to feel safe, to feel the freedom to play and explore. But the small flicker of concern lingered, like a shadow she could not brush away. She thought about the advice her mother and grandmother had given her since she was young. Always trust your instincts, her grandmother had said. Even the smallest feeling can save you from trouble. If your heart whispers worry, listen closely. Mama Lindy thought about those words now. This small moment, a toy left on the floor, a distracted adult, was her heart whispering. She could not ignore it even if it seemed minor. Mama Lindy watched the caregiver carefully. She was a young woman with a kind face, moving between children and giving instructions quietly. She had seen this caregiver gently comfort another child just minutes before. That was why the moment of distraction stood out. It seemed out of place, unusual, and that made Mama Lindy wonder. Perhaps it was nothing, but she knew that small observations could reveal patterns over time. She scanned the room, noting every movement, every interaction. Another child tripped over a mat and fell lightly, and the same caregiver quickly bent down to help. Her attention was back on the child, gentle and caring. Mama Lindy exhaled quietly. Perhaps it had just been a small lapse in focus. Still, the uneasy feeling lingered. Mothers did not easily forget these moments, and she resolved to remember it in case she saw it again. The children were building and playing, laughing, running, and shouting softly. Bayo was happily stacking blocks, his concentration deep, and occasionally looking up at Mama Lindy as if to check that she was still watching. He smiled at her and she smiled back, but her mind kept turning over the earlier moment. She thought about how important it was for caregivers to notice small things. A child dropping a toy, a child seeming sad, a child wandering slightly from the group. These small details could make a big difference in keeping children safe. Mama Lindy walked slowly to the other side of the room, pretending to adjust her bag. She kept her eyes on the caregiver, noticing how she spoke softly to another child, handing a crayon to a girl who had dropped hers. She observed her kindness and patience, but she also noticed that when her attention shifted, small things slipped unnoticed. It was a delicate balance. Everyone had limits, but as a parent she had to be aware. Bayo noticed her moving and ran over, holding a small block in his hand. "Mama, look. I built the tallest tower," he exclaimed proudly, pointing to the stack of colorful blocks that teetered slightly at the top. Mama Lindy crouched to his level and smiled. "It is very tall, Bayo. You did a wonderful job. I am proud of you," she said softly. She wanted him to feel proud, confident, and happy. And in that moment she realized that her worry was not just about mistakes. It was about ensuring he had the guidance and safety he needed while exploring the world. The morning continued and Mama Lindy noticed more small details. Another child spilled a small cup of water, and a different caregiver quickly cleaned it up while calmly reassuring the child. Yet when she returned her gaze to the first caregiver, Mama Lindy noticed she seemed preoccupied again, glancing toward a clock on the wall and talking quietly to another adult. It was not alarming, but the repeated distraction reinforced Mama Lindy's concern. Her instincts told her to watch, to observe, and to make a mental note. She thought about how easy it could be for small moments of inattention to accumulate. One small missed detail here, another there, and patterns could form. Even if nothing serious happened today, Mama Lindy understood that careful observation was her responsibility. She could not control the actions of others, but she could ensure she knew what was happening, that she was prepared, and that Bayo remained safe. Bayo ran past her again, laughing with another child. Mama Lindy's heart felt full, yet she kept her attention sharp. She noted how he interacted with others, how he shared, how he took turns, how he listened. She wanted him to learn about kindness and cooperation, and she wanted to ensure the adults around him were fostering those same lessons. She could see that the first caregiver was generally kind, but her moments of distraction made Mama Lindy cautious. During a brief quiet moment, Mama Lindy leaned against the wall and reflected. She had spent many years as a mother, learning to notice small cues in her children, in people, and in situations. Every instinct, every feeling was a message. And though the distraction she had observed seemed minor, her instincts told her to pay attention. It was not about assuming bad intentions, it was about awareness and care. She thought about how she would handle this later. Perhaps she would speak with the center manager, asking about supervision and routines in a calm and thoughtful way. She could observe over time, looking for patterns rather than judging a single moment. Her goal was not to accuse anyone but to ensure Bayo's safety and to teach him that it was okay to notice, to ask questions, and to trust his instincts as he grew older. Bayo came back to her side, holding a small toy car and looking up with wide, curious eyes. "Mama, can I play more?" he asked. Mama Lindy smiled, kneeling beside him and placing a hand gently on his shoulder. "Yes, Bayo. Play and have fun, but remember to be careful and watch out for others," she said softly. He nodded, understanding enough at his young age, and ran back to the group. As she watched him, Mama Lindy reflected on the responsibility she carried. She could not follow Bayo everywhere, and she could not ensure perfect care from others. But she could observe, ask questions, and guide him in understanding safety. Even small moments like noticing a distracted caregiver could be important lessons, for herself and for him. She noticed the caregiver again, speaking softly to a child who had a question about a puzzle. Her voice was patient and kind, but her gaze shifted occasionally, distracted by the clock, by the sounds in the room, by another child needing attention. Mama Lindy realized that this was natural. Caring for many children was not easy. Yet her instincts whispered again, gently, telling her to continue watching, to remain attentive, and to remember this small moment. The morning wore on, and Mama Lindy continued observing quietly, without drawing attention to herself. She made mental notes of what she saw. The gentle guidance, the small acts of kindness, the patience, and also the distractions. Her mind balanced hope with caution, understanding that both were necessary for her son's well-being. When it was time for the first break, Mama Lindy noticed Bayo joining a small group of children at a table, laughing and chatting softly. She felt a mixture of relief and lingering worry. The discomfort she felt about the distracted caregiver had not disappeared, but she knew that her careful observation was valuable. She would watch, she would notice patterns, and she would ensure that Bayo remained safe in a world where even small moments mattered. As the children played and the morning activities continued, Mama Lindy reminded herself quietly of the wisdom passed down by her elders. Trust your instincts no matter how small the concern. A mother's heart was never wrong when it spoke in quiet whispers of caution. Today she had felt that whisper. It was small but it mattered. She would carry it with her, watching, learning, and preparing for the day ahead, for Bayo, for herself, and for the lessons they both were learning in the process. Mama Lindy felt a gentle nervousness as she walked toward the manager's office at the community center. The room was small but clean, with a desk stacked neatly with papers and colorful posters on the walls showing rules, schedules, and smiling children. She knocked softly on the doorframe, and the manager, a kind-faced woman with a calm voice, looked up and smiled. "Good morning, Mama Lindy. Please come in," she said. Mama Lindy stepped inside and took a seat on the small chair opposite the desk. She placed her bag carefully on the floor, trying to steady her thoughts. Her mind replayed the small incident she had noticed earlier. The toy dropped on the floor, the brief distraction of the caregiver, and she realized that while it might have been a minor moment, she could not ignore the unease in her chest. She needed to understand how the center worked, how children were supervised, and what procedures were in place if something went wrong. The manager noticed the seriousness in Mama Lindy's expression and gestured kindly for her to begin. Mama Lindy took a deep breath and spoke softly. I wanted to ask about how the center is run, especially about supervision and how you handle accidents. I noticed a small thing earlier, and I just want to be sure that Bayo will be safe. The manager nodded, her calm demeanor reassuring. Of course, Mama Lindy. I understand your concern. Safety is our #1 priority here, and I am happy to explain everything to you. Please ask any questions you like. We want all parents to feel comfortable and confident in leaving their children with us. Mama Lindy began with the questions that had been on her mind since yesterday. How many caregivers are assigned to each group of children? Are there always enough adults to watch everyone closely? The manager smiled. We always ensure that there is at least one caregiver for every 5 children. During busy times we add extra staff. Our caregivers are trained to watch carefully, and they know to notice even small things like a child dropping a toy or feeling upset. We also rotate supervision so that someone is always observing each group. Mama Lindy nodded, listening carefully. She asked next about the rules and routines. What are the rules for the children? And what happens if a child gets hurt or feels upset? The manager leaned forward slightly, speaking clearly. We have simple rules that children can understand. Be kind, share, listen to adults, and always ask for help if you feel unsure or hurt. If a child has a small accident like falling or dropping a toy, the caregiver notices immediately, comforts the child, and documents what happened. If it is more serious, we contact the parent right away. We also teach children to speak up if they feel uncomfortable or need help. Mama Lindy felt a small weight lift from her shoulders. The explanations were clear, and she could see that the center took care seriously. But she continued, asking about the training of the caregivers. Are all the adults trained to handle children safely? How do you make sure they stay focused and attentive? The manager smiled warmly. Yes, Mama Lindy. Every caregiver completes safety training, first aid courses, and child development programs. We have regular meetings to discuss supervision, classroom management, and how to handle emergencies. We encourage staff to stay calm, patient, and observant at all times. We also review daily logs to check for any small issues so that nothing is missed. Mama Lindy listened, taking in each word. Her mind replayed the morning. The toy dropped, the caregiver briefly distracted, Bayo laughing and playing, and she realized that while her instinct had worried her, the systems in place were strong. It helped her understand that mistakes happen, but they are noticed, documented, and corrected. She felt a sense of reassurance, though she knew she would continue to watch and guide Bayo as well. She asked one more question about how children are encouraged to communicate with adults. What if a child feels unsure or scared but doesn't say anything? How do you handle that? The manager nodded seriously. We teach children to speak up in gentle ways. We watch their body language, notice if they seem hesitant or upset, and always ask if they need help. We make sure children know it is safe to tell us anything that feels strange or uncomfortable. That includes telling a trusted adult at home, like a parent. Mama Lindy smiled softly. This was what she wanted for Bayo, to feel safe, to know he could speak up, and to trust the adults around him. She felt her own heart calm as she realized that the center not only cared for the children's physical safety but also encouraged them to express themselves. After asking all her questions, Mama Lindy thanked the manager. Thank you for explaining everything. I feel much better knowing how carefully you run this center. The manager nodded, her warm eyes kind. I'm glad to hear that. We want parents to feel confident, and we always welcome questions. You are doing the right thing by observing and asking. It shows how much you care for Bayo. Mama Lindy left the manager's office feeling a sense of peace she hadn't felt that morning. She had learned that while moments of distraction could happen, the center had systems in place to catch them, to guide the children, and to ensure their safety. It reassured her that Bayo would be in good hands while she was away. Later that afternoon, as they walked home, Mama Lindy held Bayo's small hand gently in hers. She wanted to remind him of what she had learned about safety, boundaries, and speaking up. Bayo, she said softly, do you remember what we talked about yesterday? If anything feels strange, or if you feel unsure or worried, you should always tell me or another adult you trust, okay? Bayo nodded, looking up at her with his bright, curious eyes. Yes, Mama. I will tell you if I feel unsure. Mama Lindy smiled, feeling warmth and pride. She knew that teaching him these lessons was just as important as observing the caregivers. His own awareness and confidence would help keep him safe. She thought about how children learn through observation and guidance. Today she had watched the center carefully, asking questions, learning the rules, and seeing how the adults cared for the children. Tomorrow, Bayo would continue to learn not just about playing or sharing, but about noticing, speaking up, and trusting the people around him. Mama Lindy felt that teaching him these lessons, combined with the careful supervision at the center, created a strong foundation for his safety. At home that evening, Mama Lindy helped Bayo pack his small backpack for the next day. She placed his water bottle, his favorite snack, and a small notebook with crayons inside. She smiled as she reminded him, "These are for you to have fun, to learn, and to remember that you can always tell me if something feels strange or if you need help." Bayo smiled back, hugging his backpack close, clearly excited about the next day. Mama Lindy sat for a moment, reflecting on the day. She thought about the small unease she had felt earlier, the red flag that had caused worry. She realized that it had been important to notice, to trust her instincts, and to ask questions. But now she also saw that the system was strong, that the adults were trained and attentive, and that her son was learning valuable lessons in confidence, observation, and communication. She felt a calm sense of balance, knowing that both careful observation and trust were necessary. That night, as Bayo slept peacefully in his small bed, Mama Lindy stayed by his side for a few moments, watching his gentle breathing and small movements. She whispered softly, "You are safe, my dear, and you are learning. Always remember that you can speak up, and you can trust those who care for you." She kissed his forehead gently, her heart full of love and quiet relief. Mama Lindy knew that tomorrow would bring new experiences for Bayo. There would be games, learning, sharing, and laughter. And if something small happened, like a toy falling or a minor disagreement, she now felt confident that the caregivers would notice, help, and guide the children. More importantly, she knew that Bayo had the understanding to speak up and ask for help when needed. The night passed quietly, and Mama Lindy felt a sense of calm she had not felt in days. The worry that had followed her like a shadow had eased. She realized that careful observation, thoughtful questions, and clear guidance for her child were powerful tools. She felt proud of herself, proud of her son, and reassured that the choice to trust the community center was a careful and informed one. Mama Lindy drifted to sleep with her thoughts on tomorrow. Bayo would step into the center once again with his small backpack, his bright eyes, and his eager heart. He would play, learn, and grow, guided by patient caregivers and the lessons Mama Lindy had instilled in him about safety, awareness, and communication. And she, as his mother, would continue to observe, guide, and protect, balancing care with trust and love with wisdom. The morning sun shone brightly over the community center as Mama Lindy walked alongside Bayo. The air was warm, carrying the scent of freshly cut grass from the small playground outside. Today felt different from the other mornings. There was a sense of calm in her chest, a quiet confidence that she had not felt before. After spending the last few days observing, asking questions, and learning about the routines and rules of the center, Mama Lindy felt reassured. She knew that the caregivers were attentive and trained, and that the environment was safe and nurturing for Bayo and all the other children. Yet, she also knew that being a parent meant always staying watchful, always balancing trust with attentiveness. Bayo walked hand in hand with her, his small backpack bouncing lightly against his back. He was full of energy, curiosity, and excitement for the day ahead. His eyes darted around, taking in the playground, the bright walls, and the familiar faces of other children waiting for the center to open fully. He had already started to make small connections with his friends from previous days, and he seemed eager to continue learning and playing. Mama Lindy smiled, feeling a mixture of pride, relief, and lingering protectiveness. As they approached the entrance, Bayo ran ahead slightly, pausing to greet a friend with a shy but happy wave. Mama Lindy watched him carefully, noting how his body language reflected both confidence and comfort in this new environment. It was a small victory, she thought, seeing him adapt and grow while still carrying the lessons she had taught him about awareness and caution. She knelt briefly to adjust his backpack strap, smoothing it gently over his shoulders. "Remember what we talked about, Bayo?" she said softly, her voice gentle but firm. "If anything feels strange or if someone does something that makes you uncomfortable, you tell me or another adult you trust, okay?" Bayo nodded eagerly. "Yes, Mama. I will tell you," he said with a bright smile. He paused for a moment, looking up at her, and added, "I will be careful and have fun too." Mama Lindy laughed softly, the sound of relief and joy mixing together. She could see that he was growing not only in confidence but also in understanding. He was learning how to be aware of his surroundings while still enjoying life. She straightened and watched as Bayo ran to join the group of children near the entrance. The caregivers were already engaged with the children, greeting them warmly, guiding them toward activities, and ensuring that each child felt welcome. Mama Lindy noticed the small routines in action, the way the children lined up for hand washing, the gentle reminders from the caregivers to wait their turn, and the soft encouragement to share and cooperate. She felt a quiet pride in the systems in place, and a sense of satisfaction that she had taken the time to observe, ask questions, and understand the environment before fully trusting it. As Bayo waved goodbye to her before running off to join his friends, Mama Lindy felt a rush of emotions. Pride, relief, and love washed over her. She had made a careful decision, balancing caution with trust. The morning that had begun with worry and uncertainty now felt lighter, filled with hope and confidence. She waved back at him, smiling warmly as he laughed with his friends. It was a small, perfect moment, the kind that mothers cherished, knowing that their children were safe and happy. She watched him for a few more moments, making sure he had settled into the group comfortably. His small hands moved to pick up a toy car, then he shared it with another child who had been watching. Mama Lindy felt a gentle pride as she observed him, seeing the lessons of patience, kindness, and awareness that she had taught him reflected in his behavior. He was learning to navigate the world safely, guided by her teachings and the supportive environment of the community center. Mama Lindy took a deep breath and stepped back, allowing herself a moment of reflection. She thought about the past few days, the careful observations, the questions she had asked the manager, the small unease she had felt when a caregiver seemed distracted, and the reassurance she had gained after learning about the center's rules, routines, and safety measures. Each moment had been a step toward understanding, trust, and confidence. She realized that being a parent was not only about protecting a child but also about teaching them how to navigate the world responsibly and with awareness. She thought about how Bayo had grown in just a few days. His laughter was freer now, his confidence in interacting with others stronger, and his curiosity more focused. He had started to notice small details, like taking turns with toys and being patient when someone else needed help. Mama Lindy felt proud that he was learning important life lessons in a safe and supportive environment. She knew that these early experiences would shape him in ways she could not fully imagine, helping him develop both social skills and awareness.